Alrighty, so before we get into the actual episode, we got our normal in the interim here. As you can see, there's 2 more missions to do a bunch of surveys around KSC. So I picked those up. They're worth a couple $100 grand. You can see they're all clustered around there. So I just launched the Shepherd again. I've actually taken a liking to it. It flies really well, especially with its low speed capabilities. But play was pretty long and boring, so we're just going to skip to this part, which is the end. I decided to try and land in the mountains because I still had a full slate of all the science experiments, and I figured I might as well make use of the time and get a new biome that we haven't got yet. So I will be honest, it took me probably, what was it, 3 tries? Well, 3 tries before I actually stuck the landing here, but there's a pretty good flat spot kind of right behind K2 if you're coming from KC, or KSC, that you can land in. You can see me in it here, and it still counts as mountains. So we grabbed all the experiments, and we could have just recovered, but for fun I decided that we should take off and actually go and land at KSC again. And the reason being that I haven't shown how to use the flags that we put down yet, so I figured this would be a good excuse to kind of show that off. So after our close pass of K2 here for fun, let's see. Basically, you can see the target marker there. What we're trying to do is we're flying to the right of it because we're essentially trying to push it towards the 90-degree marker. Once it gets at the 90-degree marker, we're going to want to pitch and basically point ourselves there, which you can see now. So what that's doing is essentially you've lined up your velocity vector with that target vector along the 90, so you should, in theory, be lined up with the runway. And in this case here, I'm using the west flag. If you're coming from the east, you would use the east flag and basically do the same thing, except you would line up with the 270 instead of the 90. But yeah, it's a really good way to line yourself up the runway when you can't actually see it yet. And you'll see with a wonderful time jump, this is the result. That we were pretty much dead on, and somehow I still managed to screw it and drift right at the very last few seconds here. We almost blow the landing, but then and then the brakes stopped just in time. So you can see we snagged an extra 20 science and I don't know, like 250 grand. So we are now in the $1 million club. Yay! So the other thing that I did also was I took the skipper and I actually pulled the front canards off of it. And you can see here I essentially added 2 more wings to the wings, and I gave them a angle of incidence pitching up 1 click. Not gonna lie, I don't recommend it. It made it fly better in the air, but it made landing a nightmare because it has a really high fly speed now, and coming down for landing, I really had a hard time controlling my vertical drop because it just lost all its lift for some reason once it started getting below like even 90 meters a second, which is kind of excessively fast to be trying to land at. But the reason I did this was I actually ended up flying out to the desert biome, which you can see here, and collected all the science there. And then we also flew out to the South Pole, and it was a really long flight, but I eventually got out there as well and collected all the science from there. So we got an extra 26 science and no money at all really, because we weren't actually doing missions. I just did that to knock off those biomes. Alrighty, so we're going to actually start the episode now, although it is going to be in fast forward for quite some time because this took a lot of testing. So the idea here is I'm trying to build a plane that I can launch to orbit and then drop wherever I want and still have it basically do re-entry and then fly around once it gets down. My biggest obstacles were the fact that I was only using the first 3 tiers of parts and I'm staying underneath the 30 part count. So because of those 2 factors, I really had to try and build a plane that was, well, obviously minimal parts, which meant quite a few obstacles. So you can see here, this is my first test at it. I just basically slapped wings and engines onto a command pod to see what would happen. I really didn't want to take that central fuel tank, but I needed something to attach the engines to, so it ended up I had to take it, although I did drain the oxidizer a bit. But so basically I learned that just having 2 wings with control surfaces does not work. You're gonna start pitching down and there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. You won't actually be able to pull out of the pitch. And I pulled my parachute way too late, so we just slammed into the water. So what I basically tried then was I gave it some fins at the front, and I'm hoping that by having some stable control surfaces on top of the actual moving control surfaces, that it would fly a little better. So you can actually see here, it actually flies significantly better. I was actually able to completely fly around without really too much difficulty. The nose was trying to pull down a little bit on me, but I mean, you can see here I was just doing circles around KSC, no problem. So I was pretty confident that this was a decent start to the whole thing, so I wanted to test the landing, which basically the parachute only takes us down to about 9 meters a second, but what I figured I'd be able to do is in the final parts of the ascent, I would actually just fire up my engines, and I could actually use my engines to slow down the descent and essentially land at whatever speed I want using the parachute in them. So you can see here it landed no problem. So we were off to a good start, and I ended up spending a good amount of time playing around with angled incidents to try and see if I could get it to fly a little better. And this was one of the attempts where I tried adding the angle of incidence to those back control wings, and you'll see in a second here, it was not a good idea. Essentially we got caught in a really rank, I wasn't able to pitch essentially. I lost a lot of my pitch control, and you can see here, like, I was able to pull over the dive, but it still wanted to pull down really bad on me, so I don't want to deal with that. So I ended up straightening those, and then I ended up adding angle of incidence to those front, the 2 front fins. And so essentially the main wings don't have angle of incidence, but the front ones do. And the center of lift is literally right inside the center mass, if not in front of the center mass, but there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. It's just kind of the way things were gonna roll. So this was my final test. I cut out quite a few, not gonna lie. Playing around with the angles and everything else took quite a while, but you can see here I ended up building. I was able to fly no problem. I was able to do corners no problem. I was able to pitch up and actually climb up, and it was able to hold horizon locks. It wasn't trying to constantly rotate and torque down anymore. So with that, we're going to head to an interlude. So I'm still in the testing phases, but I'm ready to go attempt phase 2 of testing, which is going to be actually to fire this thing up to orbit. And I just thought I should take a second to cover a few things that I haven't shown up to this point or even used. Now there's something called is that reroute? The reroute tool. So right now on this craft, the command pod is considered the root of the craft. So what I want to do here is I essentially want to take this craft and take it over to the rocket hangar and slap it on top of a rocket. So to do that, I need to do 2 things. One, I need to change the root part so that it's the part that is actually going to connect to the rocket. So essentially I need to switch it from the command pod being the root to the decoupler here. So what that'll allow is once I move it over to the rocket, when I bring it out, it's going to consider that the part that it wants to attach with. So we're going to go ahead and basically just select the craft and then select this decoupler. And you'll see it kind of snaps it on me, but so what that's done now is essentially the decoupler is the root of the entire craft. So you can see I can actually like pull this off and that piece stays there, where normally if I was to pull this off, all of this would gray out. So the other thing that I need to show, let's get this So now that we got that as the root part, we need to be able to transport it over to the rocket bay. And the easiest way to do that is if you actually click this advanced mode up in the corner here. Most of these are filters for the most part. You can like filter the parts. But the one we're really interested in is the one here called subassemblies. So we're going to click on subassemblies. We're going to grab the craft by the root part, so the decoupler, and we're going to drag our mouse over to this subassembly drop zone. You're going to left click, and then you can just throw that guy back up there. And then we're going to call this the minifig for testing. We're going to hit save, and you'll see now there's a part up in the subassemblies, and if I was to actually click that, you can see it actually brings out the entire craft. So we would essentially have two. Although that's kind of redundant. But what this subassemblies is shared between both this hangar and the rocket hangar. So now what we can do is turn off advanced mode. I want to save it. Yeah, I might as well save it. So we're gonna leave the rocket hangar here, and plane hangar, and I'll quickly show you what. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point. Just do the same thing in reverse. But so let's say we had a rocket, whatever. So we're gonna build a big rocket, yada yada yada, and then we're gonna click subassemblies, and when we're ready to. We're to click back on there, click on that, and then you can see we can just slap that on top of the rocket, and that's essentially how you can move a craft from between the two hangars. So yeah, useful tool. I'm gonna go ahead now. Just throw that out because I'm not actually ready for that yet. So I'm gonna go ahead now and continue testing this guy. So going into building the rocket, I'd used 16 parts on the plane, so that only left me 14 parts to actually build a launcher that would be capable of getting into orbit and back down, which turned out to be a nightmare farther down the road here. But anyway, I just basically slapped together a fairly typical two-stage rocket just to see if I could get essentially the DV Delta V requirements that we needed to get this thing up into orbit. But yeah, I just, everything's pretty standard. There's a space engine in the middle there for the second stage. We're still using the swivel on the bottom. We got 4 tanks, 1 tank. And then we slap some good old-fashioned hammers on there, just give it a kick off the start. And you'll see here I actually had good DV requirements at this point, but I'm over the part count, which I noticed right about here. So I needed to shave off 3 parts, which meant basically getting rid of the boosters, and then that left me 1 extra part. So I decided to just throw it into an extra tank into the staging, the 2 stages here, and we were just gonna try launching it like this and see what happens. You can see the first launch went swimmingly. So we ended up having to swap the swivel engine for the Reliant to get a little more thrust off the pad since we didn't have any boosters. So this time it was a little slow off the start, but it at least actually got off the pad. And surprisingly, at this point I have the control surfaces turned off on the plane at the top, and this thing actually was fairly stable. However, it was not going to have anywhere near enough DV, because you'll see this first stage kicks off really early. Like our altitude's not nearly high enough yet, and there was just not enough thrust to weight ratio in the second stage to make an orbit. So we went back to the drawing board again and completely redesigned the sucker. I decided to completely ditch the second stage because having the extra engine and coupler was taking up extra parts. So I figured I'd be a lot better off trying to do just a single stage and put some really nasty boosters on it, and it would save me some part count and still keep me in that 4000 DV range. So this is, I guess, Mark II of the launcher. So we went to test that, and we had varying degrees of success, as you will see here. The biggest problem I had was I was having to use the wings as control surfaces on the top of the rocket to make up for the fact I didn't have 4 fins on the bottom of it. And it was just absolutely screwing with it. Like, I just could not keep it straight on launch. It just constantly wanted to tip over on me. And I was starting to get pretty pissed off because I knew that I needed to have all the control fins at the bottom of the rocket. I couldn't be using those wings up top. However, I just didn't have the part count to do it. So at this point here, I actually put 3 fins down at the bottom. I'd prefer to have 4, but I thought, what the hell, I'll try with 3, because I had a floating part that I hadn't used yet. So now she was really, really unstable on the way up, but by being really gentle in the controls, I was actually surprisingly able to get it up to orbit, as you can see here. So I had about 200 DV left, so it actually was kind of a success, even though it was a pretty shady launch. So then I did what any good pilot does, and hit the wrong button, and staged my engine before I could slow down. So I did a quick reload, and we tried again. Did our burn, slowed down, came into re-entry, and this is where I learned a fundamental flaw that was going to completely screw us. We're going to just ignore the fact that it's flipping. That's also a problem that I need to deal with, but you'll notice the front basic fins burned off there, and without those fins I'm not going to be able to fly the plane at all. So we went back to the drawing board. Now the problem I didn't foresee was that those front fins only have a 1200 heat tolerance, so I ended up having to take them off and put on fins that have a 2000 heat tolerance. And unfortunately, these are the smallest static wings that we have that are capable of those kind of temperatures. So it took me a bit of messing around. I wanted to do it without clipping the parts. Like I don't typically like to clip parts into things, but they were just so massive and looked so ridiculously goofy that I ended up I clipped them pretty bad. They're pushed into the wings quite a bit, I won't lie, but it just looked stupid, and I just kind of stopped caring after a while. But I just did a straight replacement of them, so they still have the same angle of incidence and everything else that the other one has. So after some screwing around with the angles and positions and everything of it, I took it out for a test launch. It was unfortunately night this time, or when I was doing these tests, so I'll save you the trouble, but it actually flew fine. Changing the wings really didn't make any difference at all on it. It still flew even with the new ones. So we ended up just replacing our sub-assembly so that we had the new one, and headed back to the rocket hangar and slapped the new improved wing or plane with the more solid wings. And then I took it out for a test launch. And you will see here, I ran into the problem of the rocket flipping again, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. And then it finally dawned on me that the angle of incidence that I had on those front wings, when they were just the little fins, they didn't really affect things too much, but now that they're a much bigger fin, what it was actually doing was completely throwing the stability of the rocket out, because it was actually, the angle of incidence was actually playing into the rocket launch. So, important note, don't use that on rockets. It is a nightmare. So I went and I removed the angle of incidence on all the wings and took it out for another quick test flight, and it was a little more clunky, but it still flew fine. So just for fun, I actually took it and slapped a tail fin on it. Up to this point, we hadn't actually been using a rudder, and even without the rudder, it actually flies. It'll drift a little bit on you, but the reaction wheels in the command pod are enough that you can actually get yaw control just from the command pod. So it honestly didn't really matter that there was no tail fin, but I just wanted to see if it made a huge difference. So I took it out, and yeah, it did fly a little more stable, and it actually kind of looks like something out of Star Wars now, but there was no way I was going to be able to afford the extra part, given that it didn't add a whole lot. So we went and slapped her on the rocket again, and fired off, and started testing again. And as you can see, even with removing the angle of incidence, I was still running into all kinds of flipping problems. So eventually I just gave up, and as long as I didn't touch the controls till well past 20,000, I was actually able to get it up to orbit, which you can see here. It just meant that it was a ridiculously inefficient launch, and I had a really heavy second burn. I think this one was like 1600 or something. It was pretty insane. Like, it was not a good launch at all by any stretch, but it meant that I was, as long as I didn't touch the controls till 20,000, I could get it into orbit in theory. So it's not a great rocket, but it's working, which meant that I was able to finally now retest the re-entry, which you'll remember I had to go switch the wings, so, and then piss around with just trying to get it to bloody orbit again. But we got there, and we were able to finally do our re-entry test. Now at this point here, I actually didn't have, I had the control surfaces turned on the wings, and you'll notice it was a really bad idea because she turned into a spinny bullet for a while and then just went full flipperoo. However, none, even though it did all the flips and everything else, absolutely none of the parts burned off, and it was actually able to flatten out, and I was able to bank out of the re-entry and actually fly around. So I wanted to then try it with leaving the control surfaces on the wings off, so I just took it back up to orbit again and dropped it, and you can see here it went considerably better. We didn't go into a full-on tumble. We actually managed to bleed off, I think it was about 500 meters a second. It did finally flip at that, I think it was like 1500 meters a second when it finally flipped, but I was able to just basically point my nose directly into the wind and just fly it. So we turned our wing back on, and I was able to just pitch out of the dive and fly around. So at this point we basically had a working prototype. It was doing everything it was supposed to do. However, I really wanted to get 4 control fins on the bottom of the rocket, but it meant I would have to shave a part off. And after considering many options, the only part that I could actually potentially remove was the heat shield, which you would think is kind of a stupid thing to remove. In fact, I thought it was too, but I figured I would at least give it a try, and so I removed the heat shield from the bottom of the plane, and just, you saw there, I just used the cheat menu to hack it up to orbit so that I could run the test. And essentially what I'm trying to do here is just see if this thing will still come down through re-entry without having that heat shield on the bottom there. Because you'll remember it's done quite a few flips in re-entry and nothing's blown up, so I figured I might actually be okay with not taking a heat shield with me. And you'll notice here, against all odds, it actually, not only did it make it through re-entry without the heat shield, it actually bled off almost all of its speed before it actually finally flipped on me. So I was once again able to just basically turn the control surfaces back on and pitch into the dive, and then I was able to fly around without having a heat shield on my butt. So with that, we were finally able to do a final test, which is where I actually put 4 tail fins and tried doing a launch again, and you can see here I was able to get a much better launch. In fact, I think I had almost 400 delta V left over. When you can see here, the launch trajectory is way flatter than the last time we did it. So having that 4th control fin at the bottom just made a world of difference in the stability of the launch. So at this point, let's let this burn. Yeah, so at this point I think we are pretty much done with testing, and we can finally attempt to go and do that mission. Hello there, and welcome to the end of all the fast forwarding and rehashing and everything else up to this point. We're actually going to do the real part of the episode. Yay! So yeah, this thing took many hours to work out all the kinks, and finally finding where I could steal an extra part to put 4 fins on the bottom of the rocket definitely saved my ass. So, it is finally time to attempt to pull off this mission. I don't know what else to... I probably covered everything already up to this point, so... We're just gonna go ahead and throw this thing on the launch pad. And there is one thing I haven't actually tested yet. So... this first shot, I might have to reset this first shot, because... basically I don't actually want to launch at the equator. Because those readings aren't on the equator. It's either like lower. So I think what I'm going to try and do is launch on a 45, so that we go around and spin around this way. That's the hope, that's the plan. We're going to see what happens. I'm not going to have a ton of control on this sucker, because she is a wily bastard and she loves to flip over. Shit's off. And it was technically nighttime, so I fast forwarded it to essentially the start of the day, so that hopefully this launch is a little bit cooler. Or brighter. That's not gonna work. I really wish I could bank during this booster stage, but every time I've tried to bank with the boosters going, it's ended in disaster, so I've given up all hope that I can actually do anything with that crap. So I want to... Oh, nope. Oh shit. Shit. Yep, I fucked it. Okay. Note to self. Lock the vector before I do my roll. Round 2. Fight! Yeah, this thing has been quite the endeavor. I ran into a lot of obstacles along the way, but I finally overcame all of them. Biggest one was that finding that extra part at the end. Figuring out I didn't need to take a heat shield with me was honestly amazing. That made all the difference in the world, because I was finally able to put my 4 fins on the damn rocket and turn off those top fins, because having the control surfaces up here is just horrible. Okay, this time we're going to lock that. Do this a little bit slower. Throttle down a bit. And turn that off. Oh, easy. This thing is honestly a nightmare. Like, it is the worst rocket in the world. Past 20, it finally starts to behave a little nicer, but oh my god. Up to 20, it just does not want to move without flipping. There's just too much weight up here. I really should buy some motive parts, but I mean, I'm trying to do this stuff showing how you can actually do it with stock parts, and oh wow, I really need to start. Well, we didn't get anywhere near our 45, but we're also going really vertical. This is not one of my prettier launches. Best one I've had yet gave me 400 dV once I was in orbit. I should only need a couple hundred though to slow down, so. Come on, you bastard. Tap. Roll. I gotta kill the engines we're already at 75 here. Fuck, gotta make up 1600 dB. Unless we have even left 1800. Yeah, this is gonna be. I don't know about this. That was early. I should only need about 200 to get down, so I mean, even if this isn't the prettiest thing in the world, I really don't care at this point. I put so much work into this thing, I just want to frickin' get it over there already and see if I can actually pull this off. It's gonna be pretty awesome if I do, though. Looks pretty sweet, actually. Ooh, we are losing our... Oh, shit's just going crazy all over. 75, 72, and we got 227 left. Sweet! Wahahaha. Now let's see how bad of an orbit we're in. Oh! Well, it's certainly not perfect. By any means. I wonder. How much DV would you take? Ooh, 300. Yeah, that's not happening. We don't have the DV for that. However, this is the lowest point over here. I wonder. Shit. I hope I don't run out of power up here. I probably should have oh no, yeah. Bring a solar panel, fuck. After all the problems I just had with trying to get this stupid thing to go. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an orbit. We're just going to let her go all the way around. Because that'll bring these guys a little closer to my lowest point. But even with that, it'd be better if they were, man. It'd be so much better if they were over here, because then I could just try and do a hard bank. Trying to turn around, that's a whole other battle. How much DV do we even have? 220. Last time we did 220, we lost a lot of burn. And I think I would rather fly at them than away from them. Anything. Yeah, sure. We're gonna go with that. And we are going to pray, because, oh my god. If this works, I'm gonna be so excited. It's been fun trying to overcome all the challenges and everything else, but there was definitely a lot of fist pounding moments of just things bugging me because they weren't working the way I wanted them to. Like, for instance, angle of incidence. Good for planes, very bad for rockets. Very, very bad. So we're just waiting for our burn here. We're like a minute out. Apparently we only have like 9 seconds of fuel anyway, so. Fire! Alright. Everybody pucker. Let's hope this works. It should, in theory. Stay. Come on, baby. I really hope this works. I wish I could see. That's kind of a kick in the pants. Maybe I shouldn't have fast forwarded it. At least it would have been daytime over here. I guess we have a nice shot of silhouettes with the moon. You can hit F2 to hide the UI, if you didn't already know. So we just hit atmosphere. Should hit fire at about 50k. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. I need you to work. You passed the tests. You should be able to do it in theory. These things are still off, right? Yeah, okay. Oh, here comes the fire. I'm really blown away that you don't actually need a heat shield to do this. I'm not sure why that is. I definitely would have thought these... When I first tested it, I thought these jet engines were going to blow up for sure. And they didn't. Which was really interesting. And then yeah, when I took the heat shield off, I thought this tank would blow up for sure. But apparently it also is super strong for some reason. I knew the wings would be okay, because these are more spacey wings. They have like 2200 tolerance. We're not quite bleeding speed yet, but things are starting to get hot. Okay, we're finally bleeding some speed. Come on, come on, come on, come on. A little more, a little more, a little more. She's flipped at like 1500 before and been okay. The heat's starting to flatten out a bit. Oh god, she flipped at 1500 again. Plan B, we're just gonna fly it. And hope nothing explodes. Come on, baby. Oh man, she's actually pitching to the horizon. What am I going, Mach 4? There you go, Jeb. You're the first Kerbal to fly Mach 4 in a plane. Oh man, we need to bank hard. Time to see if she'll bank at Mach 4. Turn, you big brick. Oh, we are bleeding speed like crazy. That's okay. And we're still at 17,000. We're not even in the soupy area. Oh my god. This might actually work. The ridiculous number of hours is going to be worth it. I'm not a fan of it being nighttime. That is a challenge I really didn't need to deal with. Holy crap, we're actually getting to it. Go, baby, go. In fact, we should probably light those engines up. They're going to be able to breathe pretty soon. pitch. Well, actually, we don't need to pitch that much because frick is that thermometer? This thing kind of, well, it flies like a brick up this high, but it definitely flies its best around 1,000. In fact, I'm just gonna quick save because I call that a re-entry success. Not bad. If we had got our, if the rocket wasn't so freaking unstable, if I had more parts, or better parts, I definitely could have made a rocket that at least at launch you could control, so you could actually get this angle right. And you could like drop right onto those suckers. Wow, we are at 4,000 feet. You need to stop dive bombing. Bad jab. Stop doing stunts with the plane. But yeah, I find this is the symptom of flying this thing up too high, is it just constantly wants to nose down. Once you get below 1,000, it finally will start actually flying straight. Well, is it 1,000? Yeah. Definitely looks like it's 1,000. I didn't say it was a good plane. It's just a plane that you can actually fling via orbit and re-entry to wherever you need. And it does technically fly, even if it is kind of a piece of crap flyer. And flies a bit like a brick. Okay, seriously, stop nosing down. You're starting to bug me. Oh, I need to get lower. Man, I really wish it was sunlight too, so I could actually... What are we over right now? We're over water right now, so it doesn't really matter. There's no mountains. This thing still wants to... Is it because I'm going too fast? Maybe. Oh... I wonder if it's the heat shield. Because when I balanced this sucker, there was a heat shield on my butt. I bet you that really screwed with the... I bet you the mass and lift are all screwed up. And that's why she just is constantly wanting to... She's just like falling constantly. Oh, that is so annoying that I did not account for that. How much fuel do we have left? We have 20 minutes. I'm just gonna throttle up. Oh, wait a minute. Is that why it's doing that? Oh, wow, I'm a noob. Oh, I forgot that the autopilot was on. Well then. Although I still am going out on the limb and saying that my mass and lift are probably still a little bit screwballing, because that heat shield would have weighed something. Yeah. So, given it's nighttime, and I still have apparently quite a ways to fly here. Chances are I will see you when I come in for a landing. Oh my frickin' god. I think after hours and hours of simulations and engineering... Oh, don't do that. Easy now. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I think I finally did it. I've managed in under 30 parts, stock parts, to get a plane. We're coming out really slow. To build essentially a ship that can launch a plane anywhere you want. And you can just drop down and fly around. And touchdown! Yes! Yes, I did it! Yes! I finally got rid of those stupid frickin' missions. Mwahaha. I totally take back what I said too. This thing actually flies ridiculously well for something that's been just flung into orbit and back down. I was actually literally able to just like aim at the horizon, and I ran upstairs, grabbed a drink, came back down, and it was still flying on the horizon. And it could fly up to about 4,000 altitude and still have tons of lift. So yeah, it can fly not quite Mach, but pretty close to Mach, and anywhere up to 4,000 easy. And I had tons of maneuverability. So, time to recover this loss, because, well, it won't be a net loss, but we'll see how much money we get for recovering something on the other side of the planet. Oh man, that was a good challenge. That one took me a while to... Staying under that 30 part count was 33%. That's pretty terrible. But we gained money overall because the mission was worth like 110 or something $1,000. And it's full on daytime over here now. So yeah, I would like... I don't know, like, I guess you could probably mirror that. Just be really careful on the launch, because she is a squirrely bastard on launch, and there's a pretty good chance you're going straight up, and then you're just gonna have a ridiculously huge second burn. So yeah, I think at this point I am going to go crack a very well-deserved beer, even though I actually cracked one while I was flying around. That doesn't matter. And being that I have, by the looks of it, 5.5 hours of footage to somehow condense into a 30 to 45 minute episode, I think we will call this the end of that episode, because there's no way I'm cramming more into this sucker. And I honestly have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do for the next episode, so I will probably try to figure that out in the interim when the camera's not rolling. I do have a lot of money and I do have science, so I might do something that involves that. Who knows? It's a mystery. We will see you then.